We're going to start the Q&A. We're asking folks, please don't make statements. Ask a short, simple question. If you want to ask a question, please line up in the back of the room, and we will share our microphone with you. But stay on task. It's a question, not a statement. First come up, first serve. Come on up. Paula, you know me long enough.
My name is Lauren Ayers. Old-timers know me as Rennie. And my question is there any way to get the precautionary principle into this? And are you familiar with what that is and how it applies as a basic right? Maybe one of you could explain it.
I mentioned very quickly when I spoke that about all the things that we don't know about the pesticides that may well be used for the apple moth in Sonoma. And you know, if you listen to what Jim and Dan said, what you see is that you know, if we don't know what the problems are with the pesticides that we're proposing to use, I think there are a lot of people who maybe would say, well, if it's a really serious problem, maybe we need to go ahead even though we don't know. But what we have here is a situation where it's not clear that we have a problem, and it's not clear that the pesticides are going to solve that problem if we do have one. And so then the precautionary principle says, let's step back. Let's just hold tight until we know more about what we're doing and the problem that we're facing, and we can figure out a really rational solution to whatever problem there may be.
The problem that we see is that inerts, which are not inert, are generally the problem from pesticides to prescriptions and everything in this land. Inerts are really not tested, nor are they declared. They're protected from disclosure under proprietary law, trade secret, and the corporations that create these things are no way required to tell us what's in what we're using. That's what we're trying to attack. I'm actually meeting with Sam Farr with other people on Monday to go after him to try to create laws and legislation that require that all pesticides, all prescriptions, everything that you buy, every product that's on the shelf will list all the contents. We have a right to know. We have a right to know. A month ago I was in Monterey. Mary Ann Waterdam, the director of the Department of Pesticide Regulation of the state of California, talking to her with Dennis Knepp. People have heard that name. She says to me, Mike, I want to thank you because you taught us inerts aren't inert. I'm going, what? She's in the position to govern and control the safety of people and harm over pesticides. And she tells me, I want to thank you that you taught us that inerts aren't inert. You have shown me that the problem is so huge, I don't know how we're going to address it. But keep up the work and keep going.
Anne Maurice, Ad Hoc Committee for Clean Water, and I'm from Sebastopol. And I'm also on the CDFA's Environmental Advisory Task Force, so I just would like to elicit any comments from anybody in the public. I'm hoping to be a liaison between the public and the Department of Agriculture and Industry. And I think the comment question that I have is probably for Carolyn and maybe for Cathy Neville. And that is, how do we get off of pesticides? How do we get away from them? Nobody has talked about the fundamental problem, which I believe is the basis of organic agriculture, which is that the chemical fertilizers that we're using, the NPK fertilizers, the nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, that they require rescue chemistry. In other words, if we're putting fertilizer that just produces bigger, fatter fruit that gets a higher price in the marketplace, but not producing well-nourished plants. These plants have no natural immunity or little natural immunity to pests, and that has a great deal to do with why we have pesticide problems. Healthy soils make healthy plants. We've got to get beyond the NPK fertilizer. What do you think of that?
The way I like to phrase what you're talking about is that pesticides are sometimes very good at killing or otherwise damaging pests, but what they don't do is solve pest problems. The way you actually solve a pest problem is by looking at what are the conditions that cause the pest to thrive, soil, whatever, and how do I address that? If you look at pesticide use in this country over the last 30 plus years, we've been using about 1 billion pounds of pesticides every year. And that it hasn't changed much over the last 30 years. If pesticides actually solved pest problems, we wouldn't be using that many pesticides, right? We would have solved all our problems by now and we'd be on to something else. I also like to point out that if your business is to sell pesticides, and that's how you make a profit, it's probably unlikely that you would sell something that would actually solve the pest problem because you'd actually put yourself out of business pretty quickly.
This gives me a little bit of an opening here. Look, where is University of California here? I mean, it's Dan and myself. And what we do, that is University of California, is research. And I see an opportunity here. I mean, this is long-term. There's short-term issues and so forth. But also, where I come from is to revisit the whole paradigm. And I think a whole new paradigm of pest management really needs to be developed here. You know, on one end, you have the traditional IPM. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have the eradication. And but what's emerging here is a new paradigm, whether we define it that way or not, and that is where you have area-wide management. And so the university, this used to be or still is in the sort of the domain of the USDA, and in fact CDFA, and University of California and traditional IPM types stick there. But in fact, we're right in the middle. And we need this area-wide management concept here. Here's a book that I happened to get. It's 2007. This is the state of the science there for this area-wide management. But UC is nowhere to be found. In fact, universities are nowhere to be found. But that needs to be developed. And I think that working with Sonoma here, but also others that have been involved in activists in LBAM, that to write President Udoff at the University of California, Vice President Dan Dooley, he's a BP of Division of Ag and Natural Resources, and also Neil Van Elfen, the Dean of Agriculture at UC Davis. I just see there's a responsibility here for University of California, but also an opportunity to really do something substantial.
Hello, my name is Renee Mignani. I'm with MOC Sonoma, Mothers Advocating for Children's Health. And my question is directed to Cathy Neville. And I'm curious, I need some clarification. Perhaps I missed it or don't quite understand, but I'd like to understand your role as the Ag Commissioner. And it sounded to me as though the CDFA is doing their report, working on getting that out in June, and that you're working locally in Sonoma County with some of the vintners or the fruit and other agricultural areas, and you're doing your job in what you need to, but I'm not real clear in how your job relates to the CDFA, and I don't seem to know if you have an opinion on whether the eradication is necessary or not, and if you do have an opinion, do you report that to the CDFA, and does your opinion matter to them? And I don't mean to discount anything. I truly mean, are you someone that doesn't just listen, like you said, I'm listening, but are you someone that can do something and take the eradication efforts any direction? I hope that's clear.
Well, there's
Can you hear me? There's not an eradication effort right now, and until the environmental impact report is completed, then CDFA will come forward with what methods they will use to contain and control light brown apple moth.
Which is not eradication?
That is eradication, but right now there isn't an eradication. Right now there isn't anything happening with an eradication. I don't know of any eradication program happening in Sonoma County through CDFA or USDA for light brown apple moth.
So the results from the environmental report will determine what they're going to do. But they're going to do something.
They're going to do something. I don't know what the state's going to do. Until the environmental impact report is completed, I will not know. And once that happens, I will give input. My staff will give input to CDFA. But let me back up a little bit. What is my role? My role is when there is a quarantine to implement and communicate with CDFA and USDA, and I am very, very interactive. Okay. And I will take input. That's why I'm trying to do outreach for the growers and the community, and I have only been here a short 5 months. Right. But that's why I'm here today, is I want to talk with all of you, and I want to get to know what the issues are in the county. But what I have done is worked really well with Napa County, and we've come up with some best management practice for the vineyards. Instead of just having the vineyards go and just keep spraying, we've come up with practices of, and we've negotiated with CDFA and USDA on allowing them to come up with their own best management practices that don't just use pesticides, that are environmentally sound, where they can walk their vineyards. If they don't find the larvae, don't expect them or require them to use a pesticide just to do a blanket spray, because I'm not really for that. I am for an IPM program and having an environmentally sound community, not just using hot chemicals to eradicate something, because eventually some other pest will pop up and they become immune to that pesticide. So I'm very interactive, and since I've been up here, I've been working very closely with CDFA and USDA and trying to work with getting things completed and getting IPM reports and getting the those things done. So I do give input once I know, but I really can't tell you what's going to happen once the environmental impact report is done. But I have gone to the Board of Supervisors and asked them to write a letter to the state to speed up, to find out what do they need. Do they need more resources? Do they need more help from like UC Davis or other scientists to do a complete environmental impact report? Because until it is delisted, if it's going to be delisted, it is rated as a quarantine type pest. And when that happens, I have to work in the realm of what laws and regulations I'm given. I do work in that realm, but I will try to negotiate to make it a more environmentally sound situation. So I hope that, does that help?
It does.
I'm here just to regulate. I'm a regulator, but I will work with the community.
See, one of the problems we have is that the CDFA and USDA believe that they're some kind of supreme agency that no one has any control over. The reason that we sued the EPA last year was to prove that they're not the judge, jury, and executioner here. And someone's got to stand up to the CDFA and the USDA when they believe they're wrong. And that's what we try to do. Some of us are trying to do that right now. The CDFA scoped the draft environmental impact report, and they included this SIT, this sterile insect technology. They included aerial pesticide spraying in rural and forested and agricultural areas. They included ground spraying opportunities. They included the twist ties. What else did they include? They splat, putting splat on either tree trunks or on telephone poles. And we're awaiting the results of their environmental impact report process. The people who were preparing the EIR generally work for corporations and pesticide companies and chemical companies. They don't work for the people. So that's who's running the draft environmental impact program, and they're preparing the EIR, the draft EIR. Once the draft EIR comes out, we're all going to have an opportunity to speak to it. There's going to be a couple of statewide hearings, but I can assure you that attorneys working for Stop the Spray groups are going to be looking at this EIR with a very fine-tooth comb, and we're going to go over it and over it and over it, and we're not going to let anything get by that shouldn't get by.
Can I just say one thing real quick? The Light Brown Apple Moth worldwide has never been the target of any eradication program. These ideas about how they think they're going to eradicate it are coming out of a dream, because we are all being involved in an experiment here. Everything that they're trying is an experiment. There is no precedent for this. This has never been successful, and nor will it be. Imagine over vast areas of wetlands and areas they're supposed to protect and not spray into will harbor the light brown apple moth to some population levels. It's never been trapped to levels anywhere in California where it would initiate a response from New Zealand. They need to have 35 moths or more per month before they will even go out and look to see if there's any damage. Our traps are coming in this year 2, 3 moths, last year 8, 6, 4. Nothing on the levels would initiate any response. So to eradicate a pest that's so entrenched and it's not spreading, it's simply they're putting more traps out and finding them. I know for a fact if you put a trap in a spot where you know there are light brown apple moths, it doesn't mean the light brown apple moth is going to fly in there. They've got all these other distractions. They've got to go feed, they've got to go lay eggs, they've got to find mates. You know, the whole idea of distraction is absurd. And I just want to point out that we're all being asked to be part of an experiment, and I have not given my consent to be part of anything like this.
San Benito County, which is a highly agricultural county, similar to Sonoma, different crops, but highly agricultural. They've just found a third light brown apple moth. And this County Agriculture Commissioner down there, Paul Matulich, has told the county supervisors just this week that he expects their whole county to be quarantined. So here we have the CDFA, because of 3 moths, going to quarantine an entire county, San Benito County. What are those farmers going to do down there? You know, that's what we've got to stop, this madness by the CDFA.
My name is Magic. I'm with Laguna Lovers from Sebastopol, and I've been a pesticide activist for over 15 years. And I want to appeal to you as a conscientious objector to this war against nature, that until we go deeper, we're not going to solve this problem. What we are doing is allowing a corporation that wants to make profit actually create a war against other species. The words eradicate, pest, noxious, invasive are inflammatory words like kike, used to kill the Jews. The question and the feeling that I have comes from a very deep place. If I can't get you people to listen to me about what has to change, I don't know how we're going to change this. I've watched groups rise and fall. You've come up because it's affected you. Until we care about the insect or plant that's being attacked, and we love it, and we want it to exist in this world as a part of us, this will not stop. My question is, can we change our language? Can we stop even thinking of eradicating another species, calling them pests and invasives, and start asking what this new neighbor is telling us about the environment that it's come into?
It's kind of like looking for weapons of mass destruction. The moths of mass destruction. Anyone want to comment to Magic? Okay. Magic, you're Sebastopol, aren't you? Sebastopol.
Hi, this is a kind of a multi-part question for James Carey primarily. Oh, Peggy Carp, Sonoma. I'm asking you, Professor Carey, because I know you were in on the meetings that resulted in the primary classification of the moth. I read the article in the Bohemian where you were talking about how it came about. I won't ask you to completely recap that.
You sure that was me or not? Or wasn't it Dan?
Oh, maybe it was, well, okay, it's for both of you. But my question is this. It's clear that the problem, there is a problem, and it's not the moth, it's the classification. So my question is, what, in your opinion, is the political, or are the political obstacles to reclassification? Or to put it another way, who is benefiting? Because it's not at all clear to me, aside from the pesticide sprayer, and frankly, I like your opinion. I don't think it's credible that they are the sole determinant of this policy. I'd like your opinion on that, if they are influencing policy on this. So who is benefiting? And what are the obstacles? And then secondarily, is it the USDA, if the USDA reclassifies, will California follow? Is the USDA the primary target here? Is that because who we should be targeting? I'd like your input on all that. Thank you.
Okay, I think Dan will. Dan can contribute to this too, but I'll.
Oh yeah. Anybody who wants to.
No, that's right. Let me respond first, and that is the way I see this. And I actually had a former graduate student. I served on his committee who does this, and or did that is classify pests. And the way USDA does it is they go through. They want to anticipate potential pests, and so they'll go through with certain criteria and they have a long list for Class A. And the problem with that, and then once it's on the Class A and meets these criteria, without having been introduced to a new region, when they can't tell how it's going to respond, they just know in the native region how it responded or whether it's a pest or not, then it gets on this list. And that's the problem right there. I don't have a problem with getting on the list as a preliminary list, but it should be revisited once it becomes real, and that is it's introduced. That's my big, my criticism of the whole process right there. You have a technician in a cubicle classifying these, it gets on, meets these criteria, it gets on this Class A pest list, and there it stays forever. And so to go against this would be to betray that initial decision. That's what I see right now. It's just like going to war or whatever, and that is you just have to, you know, put sort of good money after bad, so to speak. That's what happens. But it's to change your decision is to betray your earlier decision. That's why you get this momentum. What was your other? What was
I want to know who's benefiting. Who's benefiting from this?
You know, look, I mean, it's a reputation of these people that made the initial decision.
Is that it?
And look, there's El Liddy, I think is the name. I see him as the trigger person back in the USDA, is that he was the one that decided that, well, not on my watch is this going to get established in California. Once this decision is made, it's like the train has left the station, and you cannot pull it back. It's unbelievable. And first off, just as this letter we wrote to the Secretary of Agriculture, first, it should not be on the Class A pest list. I'm not kidding. There is not an entomologist, and I would bet at the USDA and CDFA there's not an entomologist that believes it's there. It's just this momentum has a life of its own. And then secondly, this idea of eradication, as I also said, is just nuts. There is zero chance, not a small chance, zero chance that this could ever be eradicated. But it just has this momentum that it's unbelievable. You can't pull this back.
Well, then, in your opinion, what are the chances of reclassification?
Well, I would say it's, you know, I don't know. Maybe Dan has a better opinion. I think that it's not going to be reclassified. But my view is that they're going to eventually give this battle up. They're calling it eradication right now, but in actuality, everybody knows this is really a control program. And once the money runs out and so forth, they'll just kind of fade away. Look, the olive fly, I was involved still with defretted fruit flies, the med fly and so forth, when the olive fly and the apple maggot fly invaded. And these are Class A pests, but they knew that there was no way in the world that they were going to eradicate, and so that they just said, well, they're here, there's nothing we can do. That's why I'm really surprised that they're not saying that about LBAM. This would be a way out. And they've gotten themselves into a fix here where they're I don't know how they're going to get out of this one, but they're not going to get out of it by eradicating because it just is not eradicable. So anyway, Dan might have views on this too.
And of course, our trading partners, Mexico and Canada, followed our misclassification of light brown apple moth so that they could import into the United States. And we have, if you've read the petition, we have statements from both of those countries, their ag commissioners, their ag bureaucrats, that they would consider reclassifying if the United States deemed it necessary to stay in check with our trading partners. When we sent the petition to USDA, they convened 4 committees, one on looking at the implications of interstate trade, one looking at international trade, one looking at implications of accepting this insect, and all aspects of it. And as I mentioned before, we're concerned about what was forwarded to the National Academy of Sciences, like my non-peer-reviewed New Zealand report, which of course isn't original research, it's simply reporting what I found out in New Zealand and verifiable from experts in the field. The science base and the papers that were used, you know, as Jim said, a technician in a cubicle did a research on the literature and read a paper saying, oh my gosh, light brown apple moth gets out of control. Let's classify it at this level. That paper was developed under a time when broad spectrum pesticides were used. Things that, you know, you wanted to have a clean nursery, so you sprayed broad spectrum pesticides that killed everything. You know, oh, my nursery's clean. Well, you also killed all the predators and all the things, the wasps and the earwigs and everything else that control it to very high levels. 90% or more light brown apple moth in New Zealand is controlled by parasites. And Nick Mills, who I mentioned before of UC Berkeley, has found that light brown apple moth, unlike native tortricids in California, which usually has a one moth, one predator relationship, a wasp or something, have co-evolved with each other to control each other. You know, the wasp takes advantage of this native moth, but in California, the light brown apple moth is predated on by 5 to 6, 7 different insects, including birds, spiders, earwigs, and parasitic wasps that sting the eggs, sting the larvae, sting the pupa. And I've reared, and I bought a box of light brown apple moth, which represents 50% of the total catch in Sonoma County. 15. Okay, well, not quite as much, a quarter. I have separated by females and males, so if you want to see what a light brown apple moth looks like, I've reared them, I've collected larvae, I've grown them out, I've seen wasps come out of the eggs, I've seen wasps come out of the pupa, and I provide them to Nick Mills to say, okay, what is this? These were hatched out of a light brown apple moth pupa. Sure. It does have paradichlorobenzene as a preservative in here, so don't stick your nose right on it. These are males at the top, pupa cases, and then these are the females at the bottom. Females are a little bit larger, less color. This is probably 1/10 of the entire light brown apple moth population I've reared.
Congressman Sam Farr has introduced, is it a legislation to reclassify? A legislation, or is it a resolution to reclassify? A resolution to reclassify, you know. And it's going to the National Academy of Sciences. What do you think should come out of the National Academy of Sciences? Does anyone have any idea about what to expect? I've been doing a little research, and I'm not sure if that's good or bad to send it to the National Academy of Sciences. Yes, excuse me?
Who wants to guess the results of the National Academy of Sciences findings and the environmental impact report? That certain methods will be okay to use as eradication tools. There will be support, I believe, from National Academy of Sciences that eradication is a potential, the insect is a pest, and that we cannot deal with this as an export issue, so we need to attempt eradication. I'm only guessing. I'm not very cynical, but I feel that what we provided as a petition, which was a substantial amount of work, it will be diluted and not be represented fully.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, next question.
Shirley Clark, Sonoma. Going back to the results of the spraying, Dr. Harder's already been addressing this, but what happened to Mr. DeLay and his wife was terrible. That was bad enough. And then, okay, the spray will kill moths. And what else? How many insects, birds, pets will be impacted? How many rivers, lakes, and reservoirs will be polluted? And I'm really concerned about the bees. I mean, is this going to wipe out the bees? That would be really dreadful. And this is so crazy and wrong. And it seems to be, it's seriously upsetting the balance of nature. And I really think that a lot of the legislators must have friends in the pesticide business. That's what I think. Thank you.
I'd like to comment on that. There were two meetings I attended, one in July 24th in Foster City for the Symposium of Light Brown Apple Moth. It was not the CDFA's program directly, it was the entomologists and scientists around this nation coming together to try to figure out what the heck was going on. We only could attend the last 3 hours of the last day as a public, and I was there with a few other people. The CDFA was there. What the conclusion of that meeting was that CDFA created a position and a program with no sound science involved on the light brown apple moth. That's what the conclusion of that whole 4-day symposium came to. They created 50 questions, 50 things of study that needed to be done. I have a list of that needed to be performed in order to understand the light brown apple moth. They also concluded that there were 3 people in the light brown apple moth organization, effort to try to stop it, that are the most prominent experts on light brown apple moth in the United States. And this is one of them right here. He was recognized as one of them. So was Roy Upton, and so was Jeff Rosendale. Those are the 3 that symposium recognized. The other meeting I attended, now that, by the way, has never been published. CDFA promised within 2 weeks that they would publish all of this and make it available to the public. And after prompting and prompting and prompting, they have not published any of it. We can't get it out. The other meeting I attended was in San Carlos, so this was Jackie Spears' meeting. And Osama El-Lissi was at that meeting. He's the director of the invasive species of USDA out of Washington, D.C., the same man Jim Carey mentioned. We were able at that meeting for the first time ever to be able to ask questions directly to an official or an executive person in our government system and try to get a response. Jackie Spears arranged that. We were able to ask him, when you declare an eradication program, when is testing of the chemical or pesticide you use occur? When does testing occur? He paused, he squirmed. Jackie Spears made him answer, and his answer was concurrently with the program. When you examine the whole process of the regulatory process of the EPA, which we have done, and you examine the whole process of the chemical situation, there is no testing on humans or the environment for any pesticide ever released. It is declared, we believe it's safe, therefore go use it. The testing occurs 10 to 15 years later by the EPA after there's enough evidence as to the harm it's caused. And if the harm is okay and the economic benefit is good, they continue it. But if the harm is bad, they stop it. Permethrin was released in the year 2000 by the EPA and said, we believe it's safe. In the last 4 years, the permethrin harm and incident occurring out of our hospitals around the nation has gone up 460%. If you look at the EPA records, which we did on permethrin, they plan to then test permethrin in the year 2010, 10 years later. Well, because of the complaints that are now coming in off of permethrin, by the way, is in your fly traps, it's on flea collars, all that kind of stuff. It's supposed to be safe. It's from a flower, a plant. It's safe. Well, because of the harm that's now occurring and reported from hospitals and doctors throughout the nation, They're going to test it this year. And what's their test? Does the economic benefit outweigh the harm it causes? That's the test. I'm not stretching facts, I'm not stretching the truth, and I'm not making up my own stories here. This is the situation we are in, and it must be changed. And the only way it's going to change is not through regulatory process. We are absolutely convinced regulatory process was created probably to aid corporations in the purpose of going through a step-by-step process to get a permit. Once they have a permit to go out, they're now exempt for any harm they cause because they get it from the government. Regulatory process could be used to protect people. It really could be a good thing, but it's being abused and misused. This lady's trying to do it the right way, and I commend her for it.
The governor's announcing he's closing parks here in Sonoma County, but at the same time, the funding, the CDFA is funding Sonoma County Ag Commissioner's office with, I think, about $249,000 for the LBAM program, for the detection program. Is that about right? $249,000. Is that what I read for Sonoma County?
It's somewhere around.
Okay.
Somewhere around that. It's for detection and outreach and regulation.
Sure. Okay. So you know, our government somehow their priorities are all wrong. Closing the parks, but funding a plan that's going to put poison on our land and our people.
Hi, my name is Suzanne. I live in one of the quarantine areas, and I've been to quite a few of the meetings. And Cathy, do you work with Stefan? Or is that the same department? I
certainly do.
Okay, I'm getting the picture now. Okay, so I've had CDFA at my door. I've spoken with Anna Fan, the toxicologist. I think I've spoken and talked to just about everybody I can because I live in the quarantine area, and they knocked on my door.
Which one?
Oh, in Boise Springs.
Where?
In Boise Springs. Boise Hot Springs. And my family's been in this valley 100 years. I'm just saying that because I'm not new. I'm not new to agriculture or anything. But I do have 3 children, and they were going to hang the twist ties all on our trees, 40 per tree and 40 in the next house, and they travel 100 feet. So they're saturating the air that my kids are breathing. So I really had a problem with that because I'm a pediatric nurse, and I specialize in oncology. And I've taken care of a lot of children who died from they lived in farming communities. So I've seen it firsthand. So I have a lot of questions. And I guess my question to you, I'm sorry, it's going to be relayed for more questions. Is there any way that you can get a hold of a pediatric toxicology information? Because I haven't been able to get that. And maybe you could make sure it gets done before they try to hang it in the trees, or not on my property, but the ones maybe next to it. Because their bodies, their metabolism is totally different than adults. And I'll stand up and take it for the country, but not my kids. I'll do anything for my kids. And I know there's moms out here. So could you get a hold of that, or maybe make sure that that it's not going to be on our properties, or try to be on our properties until that's done?
There are no twist ties being put out.
No, I know, but they try, trust me. Well, we have pheromone traps. That's in the plan. Okay. If that happens, could you make sure that it's not in the plan until that's done, or at least you can see it and your office can see it and it's passed out to all of us? Because the reports that I've been given from the toxicologists are inadequate. They're not thorough, and they're inadequate. The other one is I tried to also get some studies done from people with cancer in the area, and they said that we just can't get a large enough cluster groups. We need a bigger I can't say the word. Demographics to do the study. But I say no. I mean, I got 3 people on our street have cancer. My mom had a long battle with lymphoma. Like I say, we've been in the valley forever, but we need to get some studies done, even though we're a small community, because last year they were overspraying, and for the quarantine. So we ended up getting overspraying in June. And people on our street, we all had a metallic taste, and it was awful. And
Who?
I called the
I
public.
wasn't here last June,
Okay.
so I have no idea what.
All right, so these are, I have
what
3
is
questions for you, so you can get the answers to protect us, because people have all been very nice, but they've been inadequate answers. So a demographic study on cancer, even though it's a small group, we need it done. A lot of us had a metallic taste down in Boy Springs, where the valley is, because a lot of the farming communities, they felt like they needed to overspray because of the quarantines. And
I have to stop you there. The farmers have to abide by
the
pesticide
law,
laws. They
right.
can't just do blanket sprays.
Yes.
It is so restrictive for the farmers. You need to know this. They have to give a 24-hour notice for anything they use, and they have to contact our office, and then they have to do a use report.
Yes.
And our staff does monitor that. So
Well,
that
that's, and I
concerns
asked
me, you
Stefan
saying
that.
they're overspraying and that they're
Well,
kind of
they had to
misusing
use more than they
pesticides.
normally would have used, even though it was in the regulations on their documents. But the thing is, if everybody's doing that, all the vineyards are doing that, the load that we get down in the valley is huge, absolutely huge, even though they're all following the labels. So it's okay, but not. And just 3 weeks ago, my children and I were going out to a place where our horses are, and around the corner during the day they were spraying, but we already got there. So in order to, anyway, we got the downdraft, and it was during the day. So I did call the company, and they said, "Oh, I'm sorry, we won't be doing that anymore, and could you please give me the list?" But that was after the fact. That it was during the day, and we got sprayed. So we all came home early. We didn't do what we had planned to do, and we all took showers.
You got sprayed?
Yeah,
Okay.
got sprayed.
Why
We were
don't-
on our way
why
to
don't
go
we-
to a place.
Why don't we exchange information, and I think that's something I can have my office work with you on that.
Oh, that's good. Okay, so controlled spraying, who's controlling the amounts and when, which you say they do, but if everyone's going to their top amount, it's a huge amount in the valley. Can we please get demographic studies, even though it's small? And can we please have a pediatric toxicology report that's adequate before you even think about twist ties?
And I don't think they will be using twist ties. I really don't think that's going to be happening. So. But let's talk later.
Cathy, you mentioned they have to give a 24-hour notice. Who do they give that notice to? Do the people in the neighborhood, or do
they send it to our office, and depending on, I don't know the logistics of where people are, but most farmers are not really close to where homeowners are living. So, but if it's within a certain vicinity or a certain distance, then they would have to notify their neighbor, depending how far away it was.
Is there a set 50 feet or 100 feet?
It's in the pesticide law. It's all written up, and it's on the label of what's required for use of those pesticides. So it just depends what's being used.
Is that something that your office could do?
Our office, that's what we deal with.
No, but I'm saying, could you notify the neighborhoods when the spray operator tells you we're going to spray X amount of whatever on Wednesday? Could you notice that neighborhood so they would find out
It would be
ahead?
the responsibility of the person using the chemicals if they were close within a certain vicinity of the homeowners. I would say at this point we would not be notifying the homeowners.
But could you notify, or is that quite a burden?
I don't think we have the staff to be doing that type of work. Excuse me? It depends how far away they are from the homeowners. It just depends on each situation.
Is there a magic number? Were we talking 100 feet, 200 feet, 300 feet?
We're doing a pie in the sky.
I understand.
I need a little more specific information depending on what the chemical is and what they're using and how far they are from the homeowner. And if somebody's using chemicals and people are getting sprayed, then that's very serious, and they need to notify our office, and we would investigate.
So do you deal with drift issues also?
Oh, yes, we do. We do.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us a specific example, since we aren't able to say in this neighborhood this many people are lactose? Do you know a chemical that has a certain rate?
Well, it would be more helpful if I had someone who's in the pesticide program come and talk to all of you, and we would love love to bring someone in and do a training. I would love to do that. But I don't have any specific examples right now. But would
Okay.
that help? If we got a group together, I could assign someone to come and do a talk about what we do with pesticides and how we monitor them, and then it would be more factual and accurate.
There is a lot of agriculture here, right here in the Sonoma Valley.
Yes, there is.
Boys Hot Springs and Glen Ellen, and you know, so I think it'd probably be very helpful for this community if you could somehow get a notice that you or your staff will be here at a certain date, a certain time, location for them to come and they can tell you
We
some
would
of the
love
problem.
to do an outreach, you know, an organized outreach and get a group together. I think that would be very useful and helpful for everybody and productive.
And then maybe they could get some specific ideas about distances from a house to where something's sprayed. I mean, rather than just some generalities. Okay.